Before we talk about reclaiming the media, I think it's important to understand where we are and what got us here in the first place. So let's look at two images. Can I have the first slide up? Now, there's a lot of anger and resentment in people against media. So the image that you see on your left is the image from the farmer protest, the ongoing farmer protest at the Delhi border. They want quote unquote Godi media to go back because they believe mainstream media misrepresents or misconstrues them. The image that you see on the right is in fact from a couple of days ago when a violent pro-Trump mob laid siege at the US Capitol in Washington. So we need to understand what exactly has gotten us to this juncture, because media is supposed to be the fourth pillar of our democracy, right? It's supposed to represent our opinions. It's supposed to make the government accountable to us. Then how did we get to a stage where there's so much of anger against media? And I think for that, we really need to understand what is the economic model or what really sustains media organizations. Now, of course, what you just saw in the images has a lot to do with the political leaders also, and that's like a global phenomena. Political leaders across the world have tried to subvert media as an institution. But let's talk about India. Now, this TEDx is hosted by IIM Calcutta. I'm guessing a lot of you will end up dabbling, or you guys will work for startups. Now, what's the most important thing startups are supposed to take care of from day zero? It's your business model, it's your revenue model, right? Now, I believe the revenue model of conventional legacy ad-based media organization is broken. Now, let me explain you why. There's no point going into as to the fact who owns media organizations in our country. Media organizations are not profit-making organizations, right? And we know they're largely owned by corporates in our country. But if you look at what really sustains our media organizations, our newspapers, our news channels, it's advertisements. Can I have the next slide up? It's basically the government and the corporate ads that are running our media ecosystem. So if you see this collage right now, this collage has advertisements across the cross section of media. So it includes digital, it includes print, it includes electronic, and of course it includes ads from across political parties in both central and state government. Now, just think this as a question. If you run a startup or a company where your sustenance or your sustainability is dependent on a handout or a support by a certain institution or an organization, how likely are you to upset that organization? That's exactly what happens with our media organizations. Especially the last 1 year when the pandemic hit, the economy wasn't really doing that good. Our newspapers were directly dependent on government advertisers. And that's what it is, because on the one hand, you have your reporters reporting on government's inefficiency, the lack of data, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you have the marketing team that is trying to figure out how to keep the paper or to keep the news outlet afloat. And that's basically where the problem lies. Can I have the next slide up? So if you see, and this ad model, it's not just unique to papers, like I said, it's across the spectrum. Now, it's really not surprising then, Vinny Jain, who owns and runs the Times Group, which is not just India's, but one of the world's largest media conglomerate, right? Like imagine the biggest media brands, your Times of India, Economic Times, Times Now, so on and so forth, all under this one media conglomerate. The person who's at the helm of this conglomerate has gone on record and said that they're in the ad business, they're not in the newspaper business. And that's exactly what readers need to keep in mind. There was recently this documentary that had come on Netflix. I think it was called Social Dilemma, which sort of talked about the impact of big tech on our psyche and our society and governance. Now, it had a very interesting line that if you are not paying for the product, you are the product. And that's what happens in a conventional ad-based media model. They're catering to the interest of the advertiser, whoever that might be. It might be a big corporate, it might be it might be government, but they're not catering to the reader. So their news and their content and their stories are also dictated by that fact, not not as to what is in the interest of public or reader. Now let's keep that aside for a moment, right? In the last a decade and a half, technology held a great deal in disrupting the media ecosystem. Because say 2 decades ago, if you wanted to be a media publisher, you would need uplinking and downlinking of satellite. You need the licenses to have a news channel. You'll need a printing press to put out a newspaper. But when internet sort of proliferated, when digital happened, that distribution cost went to zero. So anybody could be a media publisher, right? You didn't need to go through, of course, you still have to go through regulations and all, but the distribution and the amount of friction that was required to run a news organization, that went down. Now, there was also a side effect to that very move, which side effect I think we are sort of waking up to, we are seeing now in India. Now, what exactly happened? So tools or platforms like Facebook and Twitter helped news publishers a great deal into reaching out to more and more people. But we have realized in the long run that these so-called platforms or social media outlets are not designed to serve quality, are not designed to serve news publisher. They are designed on a principle of what is called a network effect, wherein more the number of people there are on the platform, more valuable the platform is going to be. So they designed algorithms that trigger emotions out of people, that evoke reaction, because we are all more likely to comment or engage when we are angry or annoyed as compared to when we are happy and content with life. So, and that's exactly why you're seeing an upsurge in conspiracy theories around the world. Can I have the next slide? So in US, in Europe, you have something called QAnon. In India also, we saw what happened with the Sushant Singh Rajput. And this is where the kind of disruption tech enabled, and then the rotten state of our media sort of converges. Because you have these conspiracy theories going viral on Facebook groups, and then you have electronic channels who can actually, for eyeballs or for page views, keep on harping on a non-issue like Sushant Singh Rajput in the middle of a pandemic. And that's exactly because even if you're an online publisher, you're still serving ads. That is the reason why if you go to, say, Times of India or any other website, you're more likely to see like the prime estate of the homepage being given to Taimur or some unseen picture of Bollywood actress, because that will always have more clicks, that will always have more eyeballs as compared to a report on farmer suicide in Bundelkhand. So that's exactly what the crux of the problem is with the conventional media model. Now let's try to understand what distinguishes a subscription or a reader supported news model. So the primary distinction, as obvious it is again in the revenue model. In an ad-based independent media model, the relationship is with the reader, because there is no advertiser to have a relationship with, right? So it's a relationship between a publisher or a reporter and a reader. And when a relationship is with a reader, you cannot drive out or put out clickbaity content, because people will watch drama primetime drama or like a manual fighting with each other on TV. But people will not pay for content. If you try to have an independent subscription driven outlet with like the kind of content that you see on TV, it will not work because people will not give money for that. Similarly, if you have a website that is only doing clickbait content, no one's going to give money. So it's a model that not only interests, that not only serves the reader, but it also serves journalism. It also serves public interest, because by default you will do stories that people find value, not stories that people find entertainment in. And that's something that's really worked for the subscription model. And that's where the reclaiming, or the reclaiming of the media ecosystem has happened. I think I was watching some interview by Ravish Kumar, who's an anchor in NDTV, and he was sort of talking about that, when he was struggling, when he was coming up the ranks in NDTV, wherever he would go to report in a small town or a village, there was a lot of respect and warmth for reporters. People would ask for chai, for food, and so on and so forth. Now, do you think that same kind of respect exists for our primetime anchors now? I really, at least I really don't think so, because if these anchors or these news channels are not welcomed at the protest sites, I don't really think that people or readers are going to open their homes and drawing rooms to these anchors. But if you see like a conventional, if you see a reader supported independent news organizations model, especially like especially a publisher like Newslaundry that I work with. Now we've always had a very small team, but there have been times when our website for matter it has entirely been run by subscribers who also happen to be engineers. So that's the kind of investment readers have in like an independent news model. Can I have the next slide? So, and what helps in digital or an independent media model is it's a two-way communication, like a newspaper or like a primetime television. It's not just an anchor talking to readers. There's exchange of information happening. Readers are continuously giving you feedback as to what's working, what's not working. Now, of course, independent media organizations face a lot of legal cases also. Newslaundry has faced legal cases by the likes of the Times Group and the Sakal Times. Wire, which is an independent media outlet, has faced legal lawsuits by corporates. And whenever something like that happens, our readers, our subscribers, on their own have mobilized other readers to contribute more to our platforms, so that we could afford the legal lawsuits, the legal cases that were filed against us. So that's the kind of involvement or participation people have in an independent media model. Now, I'm not a reporter, but I have seen how my colleagues have been welcomed in states that they've probably gone for the first time. We have subscribers who have hosted our reporters for reporting or for investigative stuff. So that's the kind of investment we're looking from the readers as well. Now, another thing that sort of is like that works really well, both for the publisher and the reader, is the fact that independent media model by default have more scope for innovations. Can I have the next slide? Now, the reason why you see a certain kind of primetime shouting match every day at 9 p.m., it's because it's not just because it will always get more eyeballs. There's an economic reason also. Now, it's always cheaper to do this kind of primetime drama than send a reporter on the ground. So by default, ad-based publishers have very less incentive to innovate with new format, to innovate with new stories, to do more stuff, as compared to a publisher like Newslaundry, where we have incentives to do podcasts, where we have comics on Naxalbari, on the Naxalbari issue. We have done documentaries. We have done multiple formats. So independent news organizations have also brought in a lot of topics that weren't even being covered earlier, for that matter. So since all of you are business students, there are websites like Ken and the Morning Context, for that matter, which cover business and e-commerce and commerce stories in a way that the business newspapers or the so-called business channels weren't able to, right? And the only reason they could do so was because they had incentive to do so. If they do so, they'll get more subscribers and more readers to back themselves up. And that's exactly why a conventional publisher like an Economic Times will not do that, because not only it costs more resources, it will not bring them more advertisements. Doing a good story doesn't bring you more advertisers. In fact, it might be the other way around. A good story which upsets the state government is bad for your newspaper, because if you do a story that makes a state government look bad, the state government is not going to give you ads in the next month. So, but as compared to that, independent news organizations don't have to navigate that dilemma. Now, of course, the question then is that, is this the perfect news model? No, it's not. Like I have worked on subscription models and reader supported model for half a decade. I do not think it's the perfect model. In fact, there are some very genuine concerns that are there related to the model. For example, there is a valid concern that with a growing upsurge in subscription or reader supported news organization, it will also lead to more paywalls, and gradually more and more organizations will keep their quality content behind the paywall. So then the question is, in journalism done in the interest of public or public interest journalism, should it only be accessible to people who can pay certain money or have certain capacity? So there are questions like that. There are also questions that are being sort of asked a lot more in markets like US and Europe, where you're seeing consolidation of subscription outlets also. Because in the long run, any customer, a news consumer, can subscribe to only one or two media outlets. So what's happened in US is that you have the New York Times, which has like 3 million subscribers, and then local independent news publishers are struggling. So there are some valid concerns with that, and I hope in the next half decade or in the next 2-3 years, we find answers to those questions. But I still believe that the subscription model is the most the most perfect model as compared to other models. Right now, to give you an analogy, and I'll end with this. Think of media institution as a building, and this building has multiple pillars, right? An ad-based publisher, their pillars will be made up of government and corporate advertisements. So if that publisher does one bad story or one story that upsets their biggest corporate their biggest corporate advertiser or their biggest government advertiser, their sustenance will be at stake. But in a subscription outlet, let's just say a subscription outlet does a story against Modi government, right? And that outlet might have subscribers or readers that feel strongly about Modi as the prime minister. They will get upset and they will leave us. But as compared to ad-based publishers, where they have, say, 10 or like 20 or 30 big pillars, we are not dependent on those 30 big pillars. So our subscriber or our contributor community is in tens of thousands. So even if 100 people leave and go, new readers will discover and come back. And that's what makes the model a lot more secure, a lot more sustainable, keeping in mind both the reader and the journalism as compared to other models. Thank you.